dictating and driving value and provenance. Major collectors who were friends with artists in the 60s and 70s in New York, obviously bought things at $5,000 and below. So it will be a variable that's considered when brought onto the commercial market. Also the celebrity effect. If Madonna's paintings are all of a sudden sold, that's really exciting. David Bowie's collection at Sotheby's brought in great headlines. Again, it sometimes unfortunately becomes more about the owner than the actual works of art. So again, important to just consider when you are having those conversations, keep your boundaries and don't get too carried away with sort of what's going on around it. Artist market and career, this goes back to sort of that pricing with the primary market. A buying opportunity is obviously catching an artist at the beginning of their career. That being said, you have to have a risk threshold for maybe not knowing the fair market points, don't worry, that you would have with a blue chip artist, which would have a long life and success of sales at auction and privately. And again, to remember, when you hear the term emerging artists, because I have to remind myself, yes, you think of young artists, in their 20s in Bushwick, but you should also realize that from a hard historical context, it also is becoming really important, especially I'm thinking with, female artists, and giving artists that weren't considered at their time proper market attention. So whether that there's all of a sudden like a return to an interested period of female abstract expressionist painters in the 70s, that's sort of a more art historical context-driven market, but it's also important to think that on the pricing side, that's an emerging art category. And finally, trendiness. I love with the little cause man there. Street art is not my background, so I would have to defer questions. I'm very newly learning about it, but I think the important thing is with contemporary art is to also remember that there is that fad component, and I think that there are these sort of hot artists for all of these reasons that either rise via auction sales, via celebrity ownership. So again, my advice, stick to your guns, stick to your budget, stick to your risk threshold when you are deciding to collect, because time will tell, to be completely transparent, if these artists will stand the test of markets, taste, because as you can imagine, it's cyclical, and with these markets, French furniture right now is not that popular. At Christie's, we called it brown furniture, and we wanted nothing to do with it. With any deal that came in, you just avoided the brown furniture deals. And with Paddle 8, what I find so interesting, and I'm sure matches fashion with that comparable, global e-commerce, is this flexibility and vulnerability also to tastemakers and influencers, and that fluidity I find really fascinating in this exact category of sort of who's collecting what makes it trendy. So I think that's sort of an exciting opportunity with the whole online collecting. So this was sort of my preface to your question of, or to my question of how many of you have bought or sold at auction. It's an unfortunately intimidating process, and it shouldn't be. But these are sort of the buzzwords that I find would help. Auction preview, brick and mortar and online auction houses. We have a period of time where you can preview the lots for sale. Again, to help you get a sense of how much you want to spend, what's of interest to you, and really helping you to plan to purchase. I can't stress enough condition reports. It'll save so many headaches and gnarly conversations down the line when you call someone at the auction house, call someone at the online auction house, ask as many questions, interrogate the person about where, how, and why it's coming to market, and what the condition is. Reserve is the confidential amount that the seller has agreed to sell the work for. So again, that goes more on to just understanding why it's priced the way it is. Hammer price is literally when you think of a hammer in an auction going down. Online, it's when the online sale ends. Buyer's premium is the percentage that the auction house charges. So on top of tax, it's really, really important for you all to understand that there's fees past the hammer price. There's the buyer's premium, there's taxes, and then there's shipping. So even, prior to the auction preview, call someone and ask them to help. We have an online calculator. Not enough people use it, but I push it because it really also helps the unfortunate, now I have to spend X thousands of dollars on top of what I've already spent. Really important. The buy now is sort of a segue into another private sale conversation that I'll have in a minute, but the buy now sales are actually unique to what we have on our platform, which is really exciting in the sense that literally it's similar to shopping. You buy now, like click, it's in your cart, it's yours. The price points are different. It's usually with additions, but it's a great and exciting tool that I did not have that prior in brick and mortar world. So again, sort of how you buy, live in person. I mean, I think that's sort of self-explanatory. You can call and be on the phone. Online bid is obviously our whole platform. There's the iPads. The app is really amazing. It's amazing to me. You can buy art on your phone. I just find it, that's why I'm at Paddle 8. I think it's amazing. Absentee written bid is also you sending a note, more of in a benefit auction for us or a brick and mortar auction, of you saying you can bid on my behalf at up to a certain level. And then they'll execute the bid on your behalf. Another very important factor in buying in the art world, private sales. And obviously it's a private transaction. There's no transparency in the sense of there's no ArtNet records. It's between you. It's, again, you matching a buyer and a seller and coming to an agreement, and you make an X margin in the middle. I love that when my clients send me their wish lists, it's becoming much easier. We know with a certain, but again, it's you knowing your budget. It's you knowing, it's sort of like more is more, telling me the specifics that you want or the specifics that you're looking for, and then matching that. And the networks that we have, and especially in a global audience, it's a huge important part of our business. These are sort of just factors of, why online is so easy for all of you to have access. The global audience, the digital flexibility that I was talking about of all the partners and influencers and tastemakers that you can partner with and really involve on this platform. The time efficiency is that brick and mortar have, sort of you read about the spring and you're sort of dictated to, or the spring and the fall sales cycles, and you're really dictated to sort of their mercy of timetables, and they have sort of 3 months, 4 months lead up. We move very quickly. Sometimes so quickly it's overwhelming, but we move very fast. And something I'd like to stress as we launch into sort of the next sector is it's online, obviously, but with offline expertise. I am responsible for sourcing contemporary art that we sell on the platform. I'm responsible for selling. So this business development title is misleading in the sense that I am very much involved in the day-to-day grind of buying and selling. So offline, I trek down to the Lower East Side. I see every show I can get to. I travel for museum exhibitions. I still keep in touch with all of my ex-colleagues at Christie's. It's a very important thing to understand that the expertise and the care that goes into advising clients and market-savvy decisions is a lot of offline support. So these are sort of the categories that Paddle 8 works in. Post-war and contemporary art, prints and multiples. Fine art sort of covers, we've done modern sales to street art. Street art is a very well-known category on our platform, and it's done very, very well. To photographs, to music and entertainment memorabilia, and to contemporary collectibles. And again, these are, like I'm saying, with establishing relationships, I think the importance of cultivating your own interests and really going and exposing yourself and immersing yourself in galleries, in fairs, in museums, and having conversations with people in these different markets will only help you sort of better understand what you want to live with, what you want to spend, how, the taste does change and evolve, which is the fun part. It ends up being why a lot of people sell, and then they get to have something new on their walls. And also to remember, again, in the price and value, understanding that, an original post-war artist will be more expensive than an edition. And likely same with a photograph in contemporary sense, maybe not traditional. and again, with the memorabilia, you know, if Prince owned a tennis racket, I'm sure, I don't know why a tennis racket, but, you know, something sort of collectible, I think more people, you know, there would be a premium for it, unless you were going to like Brooklyn Flea, it would be a completely different thing. So just conversations to keep in mind when you're online looking at all of our platform offerings. And I know Alexander, I don't think is here, but from our co-founders, who are three amazing gentlemen, I liked this is their words, not mine. We believe that collecting should be an exercise in passion, not patience. That's why we created Petal 8. By providing the platform with the most immersive and comprehensive experience for purchasing art and luxury collectibles online, we have become the online destination of choice for the 21st century collector. We've streamlined the buying and selling experience, combining the excitement and expertise of an auction house with intuitive technology. But our specialty is our creative and layered approach to presenting curated collections to our global audience. It is this storytelling that is at the heart of Petal 8 and where we have the most influence. We want to tell incredible, beautiful, and eclectic stories of art and artists, of collectors and the curious, and I think those are very powerful and like a word of a mission statement of what we stand for. And again, price-wise, opportunity is in this middle market. You know, the whole premise of Petal 8 is that there is no global multi-category player who's really created a successful platform and a level of trust that the brick and mortar brands have in this $1,000 to $100,000 price range. And just a little plug, you can download on your app, but these are 2 live sales right now, or the iPads that my colleagues very nicely installed here to sort of peruse. And while you're here, if you have questions, I'm around. And now the fun part. Match has asked me to pick 5 artists that I, you know, am sort of intrigued, fascinated, obsessed with right now. These are the Haas brothers. They are based in LA. They are twin brothers. Simon went to RISD. His brother Nikolai toured as a musician. So on the right is a photograph, or on your left, sorry, is a photograph of their 2015 exhibition. They did a collaboration with these women artisans in South Africa, in Cape Town, and they're intricately beaded. I mean, they're their designs, but they're handmade, and they're creatures. I mean, they're psychedelic creatures, and I find this brilliant. I actually first came across them at Art Design Miami down during Art Basel. So I was sort of fascinated with the idea of, you know, again, how individuals approach art and what interests them. So frankly, they were designers to me, and I didn't kind of switch any other understanding of this art until I kind of then started stalking and following. And this exhibition was at the Cooper Hewitt. And then on your right, these are their beasts, like their designs, their fur, these sheepskin covered creatures that actually they have stools, and they actually have sold 2 at Christie's, I believe, for almost 6 figures, if not just over. Where they have benches, they have settees, they have stools, they have seats. Again, this creativity and design is just incredible to me. And right now, I know I provided it with the social media feature, but if you go onto their website, check out their newest work is ceramics, and they're called accretions, and they're I wish I had my picture up, but they created the technology of the paint that they use and the actual application of these, what they call petals, to the ceramic vases. And their whole feature there is much about female and male sexuality, so they come in pairs. And they are quite literally phallic and feminine, if we will. But they look coral-like, and they look like they could breathe on their own underwater. And they also invented this paint that glows in the dark. So I find them incredibly innovative. I think they're going to be really successful, and I like that they're cross-category for sort of a new way of people appreciating artists, designers, collaborators. I can't talk enough about them, and they're really cute. If anyone check out the Haas brothers. Sharra Hughes, I hope you all get to the biennial, to the Whitney. It's amazing, and obviously in your backyard. Sharra Hughes, her canvases, I find sort of reference the idea that painting takes, or canvases can take you, and art can take you to another world. She quite literally paints sort of like an entranceway or like a framing of these kind of fantasy worlds. These aren't very close up, but you can absolutely check out her work. She also did a collaboration with Tiffany as one of the Whitney Biennial artists, so you can actually walk down Fifth Avenue and see the windows. She was the only artist that didn't use their signature silver. She painted a ceramic vase, but again in front of one of her amazing sort of abstract landscapes, but also these sort of crazy dreamlike backgrounds. I think they're really beautiful. You kind of want to jump in one of them. Hugo Mccloud, another guy I can't stop talking enough about. I had the privilege of getting to see his studio in Bushwick, of course, and during Armory Week. And what sort of attracted me to his work was very much the idea that his process, he's not, when we think of academically trained, like I said, the art school RISD, he worked in construction. He's from California in Palo Alto. So his not only are his materials, his actual application and process is very physical. He lays these canvases and he paints on tar paper, like a roofing, which is what he decided, because I think he actually took it, I don't want to misquote him, but I think he actually said it was on the roof of his building, his apartment building, and he was fascinated by the textures and the way that it had just been recently painted, so he decided to use that. So he took it down to his studio and he lays these massive canvases on the floor, and he then covers them in aluminum foil. So he's using a blowtorch, like a hot steel plate, I don't even know what it's called. I mean, a very physical process that sort of reminded me of Pollock standing over his paintings. I mean, it's this rigorous physical, and he's this kind of very manly, he was in, flannel jacket, like just very manly artist, and seeing him, really live this process was really interesting to me. And then he creates these beautifully, intricately, almost looked like wallpaper to me, by then using these more traditional wood blocking, where he would hand carve wood blocks, apply the paint, and then on top of the tar and aluminum, make these beautiful patterns. So he works with Sean Kelly Gallery. These pictures are actually from his recent exhibition with them called Veiled. I think they're stunning. And then in the opposite, this wasn't with the wood blocks, but this was him sort of removing the aluminum application after he had painted the canvases, again, after spending them working on them on the ground. And I think that process of actually working above a canvas is really interesting. Again, this is sort of an interesting one. What brought me to Caroline Larson is that I really loved the gallery that she was having an exhibition with last summer, The Hole on the Lower East Side. I find that they actually have a great eye. I can't say enough nice things about them. So it was an artist I had never heard of. She just finished her MFA at Pratt maybe 2 years ago. They had this exhibition called Kabloom, and I believe at the end, in the spring, maybe, I actually don't even know. She's having an exhibition out in Santa Monica soon, I want to say. And what I loved about this is it almost looks tactile. She uses pastry tubes to apply her paint. And again, this sort of fantastical, lush, tropical idea of like paradise to me. It struck me. I have been working between South Florida and New York for the past 4 years. So I think then I found out when I looked at her CV and read it a little bit more, she grew up in Sarasota, Florida. So I think that whole fauna and the humidity, I think I could kind of feel it through the canvas, and I really liked it. But again, it has no commercial market as of now, sort of young and on the rise, I like to think, but the way I kind of stumbled upon her was the gallery relationship and my sort of relationship with them. And last, actually, a colleague in London sort of turned me on. Sam Levy-Jones lives and works in Chicago, and this is a much more intellectual sort of approach to looking and understanding at art. He actually deconstructs law books, specifically on African American history. So he's very much challenging sort of the reference of the American judicial system. So over here we have, and I should say he's with Gallery Lalonde, which is in New York and Paris. So over here we have 33 panels of, again, deconstructed books. And at first I have to say I found this sort of quilt-like sort of aesthetic really beautiful. But there's obviously much more powerful intention behind these ideas rather than just, but I think he's also referencing this idea of passing on history and culture through that quilt making process, that texture of the law books, but also very much, I don't know, in a beautiful sense, sort of saying this hopeful challenge, but definitely an important investigation into how we receive and how we live with going forward our legal systems and sort of governmental, which I think is very relevant and political. So those are my 5 artists of interest. I wish that was more in caps, but I think, in short, I hope you hear this from everyone who works in the art world. You should buy what you love. Use us as resources, and but absolutely, it should be up to what you want to live with and what you want to sort of invest in your life. I would love if people asked questions. Yes.
Just a question about photographs.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, today's age are mainly copied.
Mm-hmm.
So where's the value start?
Okay, so the question is, where does the value start in a photography context? I think that goes back to sort of understanding the matrix of the art world. I have a good friend who is an underwater photographer. I hope this answers your question. And he sort of has been selling on his own, and he started on an Instagram account, and that was sort of how he built his following and sort of how he made a living. Now he then started the search for representation of a known gallery, now Marlborough Gallery. So in that sense, I think from a pricing and value standpoint, when you think about how an artist who's a photographer makes their impact and how they establish a market sense, does that answer? I mean, that's more of a traditional role, and those are the artists that we would sell on the platform. Does that help? Okay. Yes.
I shouldn't say about the 5 artists you really like was extremely interesting, and I
Oh.
appreciated that. But on the flip side, I'm curious if there are 5 artists, or if you can change the number, that you find Adelaide is like right now you're looking for art from, or their work consistently sells.
Oh, I mean, that's like a selling pitch. That's great. Like, no problem. I mean, really, the platform has performed really strongly. Obviously, I was saying around that street art category, but from these blue chip artists. Is that what you're asking, sort of?
Well, like specifically.
Sure.
A little bit late, so I'm sorry.
Not at all. I mean, Damien Hirst, right? So, like, that's an easy sort of platform sell. It kind of sells itself, if you will. Yayoi Kusama. I mean, I've seen that name nonstop. Marilyn Minter is actually a photographer. Sells very, very well in the contemporary art sense. Trying to even think. I could go on. We just had like Ellsworth Kelly, even in the prints, sell really, really well. I think we actually have one. Does that help? I mean, it's like very blue chip names.
Well, I mean, Damien Hirst, you said that is coming up.
Yeah.
So those are kind of interesting examples, just like they're very relevant right now.
Yes.
Are there artists that are just like very hot for who they are, not because they show up?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, and I really do like his work, but I think of an example of that sort of artist that was hot for, a second in his market sort of reflects. Oscar Murillo sort of rose to very, very fast and furious market value. And now I know his work has sort of back maybe, hopefully, a little more comfortable levels. Again, that depends on how the artists sort of, not just gallery representation, but how they perform if he continues to work. And sort of that whole supply and demand idea of what they're creating, what their output is. But that artist, sort of stands out in my mind as I remember the sort of high trajectory. And then now having clients that can't reach those numbers that they saw a few years ago. Of course. Anyone else?
To piggyback on her question.
Yeah.
What if they're additions as opposed to just, well, you can answer twofold. So
Sure.
one, that they're not additions, and one, speaking to the fact that sometimes it's an addition of 5, a couple artist proofs, or an addition of 500. Obviously.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
500 is
Value, and then that's a
Right.
really important part. And that goes back to the sort of pricing of editions. A Kuhn's puppy vase, like I mentioned earlier, is like an edition of 3,000. Completely different price point of
But still worth collecting in your opinion or not?
absolutely
Okay.
worth collecting. Absolutely. I just think again, it's that understanding of what you're spending. And or then you think of like a Stella, one of his prints or another absolutely worth. But then there would be an edition of maybe like less than 10.
Okay,
And
so
with
look
photo,
for less than 10,
yeah.
you're looking
Well,
for
I think an important thing to keep in mind when you are collecting editions is that yes, value will stay in smaller editions. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone else? Well, thank you. There's so many people. I hope you found it interesting, but I'm around for a little bit after if you have any questions. So thank you.